His music. When I was a high school student, I took up the cello and put it down for 30 years and then took it up for 10 years and then put it down again, to no one's dismay. My cello teacher, Amy Camus, was supposed to be here today, but she was called to play in the Long Island Symphony to substitute for somebody who was ill, so she's not here. At any rate, one of the first orchestras I played in was a little chamber orchestra led by a deaf conductor, which I thought was pretty good, since I was not so thrilled to be playing. And problem was he was a cellist, and his hearing loss was high frequency, so he could hear my mistakes. But he was nonetheless a deaf conductor. It made me think of what people in Beethoven's later years must have been like playing for him. So this is the deaf conductor. He hears the song, but not the note. The distant strains of sound, remote and muted now, were once a blare of brasses, woodwinds, strings, and snare, a harmony he knows by rote. As music rises in his throat, as melody begins to float across the stands and through the air, he hears the song. The tired musicians start to gloat at absent cues, a bar misquote. Then, as they're swept up in the glare of blinding sound and forced to share his vision of the gods who wrote, he hears the song. Well, that didn't last too long, and then I figured the right place for me was in a seniors orchestra, where a lot of people were older than I was. Most of them were my contemporaries, and I figured they wouldn't be too terrific. As it turned out, I was generally right, although my husband came once to one of the concerts and noticed that the oboist had played in Toscanini's orchestra. Is that correct? Of course, you can imagine how old he was, but we knew who he was. He wasn't part of us. At any rate, so this went on well for a while, and then the conductor asked me one day if I would mind if this young person sat in at my desk with me. And it turned out that he was auditioning. Actually, it was a she. I turned it into a he. It was a young girl. And she was auditioning at 11 for Juilliard. So I was in big trouble. And we played one piece, after which she said, "May I suggest an alternate fingering?" And I was out of there. That was it for me. So I imagined what it would have been like to be there on New Year's Eve in the Seniors Orchestra. And that's the name of it, New Year's Eve in the Seniors Orchestra. It's a little sonnet. Why next to me this miniature Casals, whose sight reads a Bach Brandenburg with ease on the downsized cello moored between his knees? He should be home, not in these drafty halls, dreaming of sledding hills and hard-packed snowballs, instead of mingling with retirees whose conversations limn their maladies and dwell on orthopedic protocols. When our conductor pantomimes the cue for us to send vibrato birds aloft, the child's fingers slide to the note as lithe as waltzing skaters in an ice review. I look down at his gold hair, baby soft, then lift my bow, my arm curved like a scythe. It was New Year's, after all. You know, sometimes I have to footnote this, depending on this next one, depending on who's ever heard of Marge and Gower Champion. I assume that most people have. So I don't have to tell you that they were the successors to Fred and Ginger. And they were very popular during the 1950s and on the stage, on television, in the movies. And about 5 years ago, when Marge Champion, Gower died many years ago, was a mere 85, she and a partner, Donald Sadler, who was one of the originators of the ABT, American Ballet Theater, decided to rent a practice room twice a week and dance, do ballroom dancing. And I read about this article and wrote a poem, and I sent it to her. And she was delighted. And she said, if it's ever in a book, make sure you send it to me. And I just sent it to her. And she sent a lovely note back, but people send email. I mean, how can you cherish an email? I was hoping she'd write a lovely note, but I printed the email. At any rate, if you have a chance, they just made a documentary of this called Keep Dancing. And our friends, the Davises, and we went to see the premiere of this at Queens College recently. It'll probably be in the theaters or around, at any rate. I love the idea of the two of them dancing for themselves. They are now, and when we went, she is 90 and he is 89. And they're still dancing. It's called Make-Believe Ballroom. That champion of dance, one half of Marge and Gower, glides at 86 across a rented floor. Her partner, Donald Sadler, is 1 year younger, head and shoulders taller. They meet 2 times a week, if time allows. Above the black rehearsal clothes, their white hair whispers what their fancy steps deny. As Artie Shaw plays Stardust, they reclaim the days when music had no need to shout, and beauty beckoned with an ivory glove. You ought to see that. That's really very pretty, that. Okay, page 42. This one's from Muriel Weinstein, my friend and board member. Muriel once said to somebody while we were standing and talking about poetry, "This is Carolyn Raphael. She's a formalist." And first of all, remember saying that? With a little sneer, only a little sneer. At any rate, formalism is really loving the forms of poetry. I certainly don't write entirely in form. I just grew up with a musical background, and I hear a lot of music in some of the forms, so I tend to go back to them. But what bothers me is the antipathy between some formalists and free verse writers and the reverse, some people in free verse who scorn anything written in form. So I wrote a conciliatory poem trying to get the two sides to be friends. It's called An Invitation. Yes, I know the 20th century happened. I bloomed in just spring, pushed a red wheelbarrow, hung on the wet black bough. But oh, those old sweet songs, rhyme mirrors harmony, measure keeps chaos in step. Grant me my Yeats, Auden, Wilbur, and Hecht, fine dinner companions. Your table is long. Afterwards, we can all go out to a reading downtown. Come, let's walk together. I have so many of my friends here I can refer to things they told me. My friend Peter Chetta, once, who is a theater person, once told me of a euphemism that, I don't know if you used it or other people used it, when they saw a play or a performance that was bad and they were forced to go backstage, and they would say, "You were never better."
And the other one is, "I can't tell you what I thought about it."
The meter wasn't right for that, but I used the other one. Anyway, this is euphemisms. "You were never better," says the agent to the fading star when the curtain falls. "That's some baby," says the ant, although his ears stick out like sails. Evasive terms conceal the sword.